Live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't... Lifeboat Live, we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck. Hello, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville. You were on the lifeboat. And as you saw from that little intro, I'm not old school. Today, I've got my bobbleheaded partners back, feeling good and ready to roll. So that is good news. I want to thank everybody for all of those thoughts and prayers. I'll keep those thoughts and prayers coming for Chris Charlebois' daughter and her mom. They could use some prayers. It's the math as well from the look of it. A little update on my sister. After days of sort of jumping through hoops and really struggling with a medical system that seems to be in a funk with everything that's going on in this country, she now has a room, which has literally taken days. It's looking like she's probably going to have the procedure today. And they're talking about opening that up to get the stuff out of it and probably keeping her overnight. I don't know whether they'll let it drain for the entire evening and then stitch it back up later or how exactly they're going to do it. But for all of you that sent out thoughts and prayers over that, I really appreciate it. There are some of you reached out to me personally. Actually, a lot of you did, and said some really lovely things. And I appreciate that. It goes a long way. It really does. So once again, thank you. And looks like the usual gang of suspects is starting to file in. Great to see all of you here tonight. As you saw from the thumbnail, we're talking about the lifelong fight. You know, there are a lot of cliches and there's a lot of things that are said in the rehabilitation game, recovery. Things that are said over and over again so oftentimes that they just become sort of thought of as fact. And I think that one of the biggest disservices that we do to all people who are getting sober is that it becomes such an event. You know, we build up the actual event of getting sober to the point where it really becomes bigger and larger than it really is, because it's not the event of stopping the chemicals. It's really not. That's not the process. And that's not, I say a lot, and it's become a cliche here on the boat, but I say a lot that it's not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it's a lifelong fight. And people, it really is. We've seen recently, let me adjust this here. We've seen recently with, so people have been on the boat a long time. We've had a couple of people that slipped, and some individuals who fell back into some old patterns, and some individuals that fell back into new addictions, but through the same old patterns. And I think what happens very often is that when the time comes that you have made this, epic choice, oftentimes that moment of clarity where you have an epiphany, and all of a sudden you think, this is it. I'm going to change. I'm going to turn my life around. Things are going to get better. And you build up that moment. And what happens is, once the decision part of the game is over, for most people, there is a period of detox, or a period of quitting, or whatever you want to call it, depending on what your substance or your habit is. Obviously, that's a slightly different procedure for every chemical. But anyway you shake it, it's a detox. And during that detox time, it's difficult to think about anything else. Very often you sort of ride this wave of the decision, and then there's the event, where I'm done. I'm setting down my habit. I'm moving forward. Life is going to be good. And for the first, say, 7 to 21 days, depending on the chemical and the habit, you go through this detox. And when that period is over, for the first time for many, many people in a very, very long time, you start to feel normalization. Because depending on the amount of time that the detox takes, for some people, 14 days is enough for the brain chemistry to begin to act normal. I'm not saying that your neural pathways are reconstructed. I'm not saying any of those things. But what I'm saying is that the process of thoughts becoming normal start to take place usually in about 14 days forward. So once that chemical is out of your body and you're done feeling the sickness and the withdrawal and all of the things that accompany that, we all tend to get into this sort of a honeymoon phase. And we've seen it on the boat. I mean, how many times? You see people who all of a sudden they are on fire. They are so gung-ho for sobriety and all things that means. And they become dedicated in a way that very often no one's been that dedicated in their life about anything. Because unlike weight loss and unlike, a lot of the things that we make resolutions about, or the life-changing events, I'm going to get in shape, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, the results are almost instantaneous. When you stop using, amazing things start to happen almost instantly. They're not always great. In some cases, they're very, very difficult. We've spent a lot of time recently, because of the holidays and everything else, we spent a lot of time talking about IQ versus EQ. And your emotional quotient, the toolbox necessary to sort of navigate the waters of the rest of your life. And what happens is, very often, because we don't have the emotional tools in place, you spend a period of time an emotional wreck. And during that honeymoon phase, that carries you through that, right? You're still gung-ho. You're ready to take on the world. Okay, yeah, so I cry at Hallmark commercials, or, there are certain movies that just sort of floor me, or things in the past that I feel like I haven't dealt with. All of a sudden, I'm dealing with it. And it's emotionally over the top. As that honeymoon phase begins to wear off, you're still in the same place with the EQ, but you don't have this massive ball of feel-good chemicals that you're riding any longer. They tend to leach out of the system, and now you've got a malfunctioning reward center of the brain. It's not functioning right yet by any stretch. That's a process. So the honeymoon phase is over, and now it's reality. And I think because we try so hard to encourage people to take the plunge, we encourage people so much to make that decision where this is it. It starts today. I'm done. I'm the rest of my life starts now. And obviously, when you're talking to somebody about doing this, you don't want to sit that person down and say, by the way, In a couple of weeks, it might really suck for a while. It's probably not a great sales pitch, from a standpoint of what we do. But I think by accident, we may do a disservice in not explaining to people exactly what that lifelong fight means. And I am by no stretch of the imagination someone who has spent a long time sober. 6.5 years is, it sounds like a long time to people who quit yesterday. But when you consider that I've been on this planet for 51 years, 6.5 years of it spent sober, it's not a lot of time. It really isn't. And like anything else in life, people, you get up and you fight the good fight, and you do it every day. And I'll tell you, for me, it's if I take a little time off from the lifeboat and all of the things that means, everybody knows it. I'm not going to slowly sort of stop leaving comments and just back out without everybody on the lifeboat going, where the heck is Captain Tommy? Same thing with Mark. If Mark's not here with me, people ask me, what's up with Mark? How's he doing? But the people on the boat, because of the number, and we look out, we try to. There are people that reach out to me every day asking about this person or that person. One individual in particular who we care a lot about has not been here for a minute. I've been getting a lot of emails asking about it. But the truth of the matter is that it's kind of easy for people to sort of move in and out of the lifeboat and what we do. And it's the same thing in your sobriety life. You don't have to be on the lifeboat every single day to remain sober, but you have to be on the sobriety boat every single day to remain sober. Make no mistake about it. You can't put one foot in that world and one foot in the other. And I don't mean to say, well, you're drinking 2 days a week thinking you're going to remain sober. That's not what I mean. We've done tons of videos about things like full commitment, shoving all your chips into the center of the table. We have come up with so many analogies for what it means to do full commitment, right? Everything, you're giving it your all. We've done a lot of videos on what that relapse process looks like for most people. It is a process. It's not something that you do instantly. And I've talked about how in my life, it's really easy to tell if I'm in the relapse process because I have kind of structured my life that way. I spent so much time using that. So much of what I do on the day-to-day, that is the boring part of my life, are direct indicators of the new versus the old, right? If I'm not making my bed, I'm probably doing something wrong. If I'm not keeping the cat litter clean, sounds funny, right? But all of these things are, to me, they're almost like talismans. They're almost like, the canary in the coal mine, and if you're not familiar with that term, people, nowadays when people go in coal mines, they wear these oxygen sensors. And when that oxygen sensor gets too low, alarms go off and everybody gets the hell out of the mine. Because when the oxygen gets too low, you don't realize it. And as that starts to happen and you get the hypoxia, people just sort of fall asleep. It's not a dramatic thing where all of a sudden you can breathe and then you can't. You're still breathing. You're just not getting the oxygen in there. So back in the day, they would put cages in there with canaries in them, because canaries require, with the size of their lungs and how they breathe, they require a little bit more oxygen than we do. So if that canary fell over in the cage, that was sort of the indicator that it was time to get out of Dodge. As people fighting the lifelong fight, because it's not a sprint and it is not a marathon, it is a lifelong fight. It's a cliche that we will keep talking about, people, because it's rearing its head, and it's rearing its head often now. You have to design in your sobriety canaries in the coal mine. You have to put into your sobriety oxygen sensors. You have to do things in such a way that it becomes very, very evident to you if you're starting to do the things in your past that you did when you were under the influence, because those habits come back before the drug use does or the alcohol use does. You start to slide into old patterns of thinking and old patterns of acting. Again, for me, it's going to be pretty obvious. If I do 2 live feeds in a week, people are going to go, what's wrong with the captain? And I'm blessed in that. I mean, there are days, people, that I just go, good God, what am I going to talk about for an hour? But there are also days that no matter how bad, or ill prepared or anything else that I feel like, I don't really feel like this is a good subject, or I don't really feel like I sit down in front of this microphone and I start talking and I start squirreling a little bit and looking down, and I see the names of people fighting the good fight. And the next thing you know, I'm kind of able to shake off, whatever is going on in my day to day. And there's I don't want to use the word adrenaline because I don't think that's what it is, but maybe it's feel good chemicals. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I get to a point where all of a sudden, you start doing the video like this and you're just dragging and you're going, oh, this is 60 seconds times 60 minutes. So that's a grand total of, right? And you're just kind of working that through in your head. And the next thing you know, you're 15 to 20 minutes into the live feed, and you're starting to gain a little momentum, and you start sitting up a little stronger, and you start taking a little bit more wind in, and the projection of the voice gets a little bit better. And all of a sudden you're a little bit more engaged and you start feeling like you're really doing something. It's no different in life. Every single day, whether or not I'm sitting in front of this camera, it's the same thing. And whereas I may have done a disservice to people who are just starting to quit by not explaining to them that you're going to run into normal, you're going to hit a new normal. And that new normal, I don't care what anybody says, and you can be angry at me for saying this or whatever, there's a period of time where that new normal is boring. It is. The life of somebody on drugs, as awful as it is, tends to be exciting. It really does, right? You're not sure what's going on from one day to the next, and you're living by the seat of your pants, and you're stealing and you're lying and you're doing all of these things that, as bad as they are, kind of keeps life, on edge. And living on edge does things. It's a whole different part of this process. Now, I'll tell you something, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. When you get by that, missing the adrenaline aspects, and it may not be adrenaline, but you understand what I'm saying. When you get over that, this is just not quite what it used to be. When that phase gets over, you sort of get into the second honeymoon. And for me, it lasted for years, literally years. I got up every morning and my first thought was, man, I don't need any poison today. I don't have to start running. I don't have to start chasing. I don't have to start doing any of that garbage. My life is a wide open book, and I can write it. I can decide what I'm going to do, and I get really excited about this new life. While I may have done a disservice to people by not explaining that well enough, and I'll take that. I absolutely have not done a good enough job from the chair to describe that, once the honeymoon period is over, because I've done a few videos on it, but I don't think I did it well. I really don't. But I'm not going to screw up this part, right? So pay attention. No matter how long you're sober, there are going to be days that suck. I'm going to say that again. No matter how long you have been sober, and no matter how fantastic a life you have crafted for yourself, everything is perfect. You now have the perfect woman. You now have the perfect job. You got a house that you love. You got a car you dig, right? Everything is good. For the first time in your life, you got money in the bank, right? You go into your wallet to see if you got any cash, and there's $160 in there that you didn't remember you had. Like that kind of exciting stuff. Everything is going good. There are still going to be days that suck. And because of the amount of time that most of us spent not dealing with days that suck, you're always going to have to overcome that little ant or ants that start tugging at your sleeve. And, I'm not picking on anybody, people. Sometimes I say things and I feel like, oh, you know what? They're going to know exactly who I'm talking about. But sometimes you just have to do it. You know what I mean? I'm not picking on anybody, but we have a chat group, and that chat group never stops going, which, by the way, I think is awesome. And you can't sit in a chat room or a chat group and discuss sobriety 24 hours a day. And let's be really honest, you shouldn't. It doesn't require that kind of dedication. It doesn't. But it does require talking about things going on in your life, right? Just sharing what's going on. It's like what we talked about, dealing with disappointment. The perspective starts how? It starts by you talking to other people and telling them what's going on in your life. And the next thing you know, they weigh in with some perspective and you get done with the conversation going, yeah, it ain't really that bad. It's a speed bump, right? It's not a car wreck. It's a speed bump, and it's one I can get over. However, if you're in the live chat and there are people in there discussing, how good beer tastes, right? It's not the end of the world, people. And absolutely, you know what? I like the taste of beer. But if you start thinking about the fact that beer tastes good, you're probably not in a great place. I'm just being honest. And if you dislike me for saying that, feel free. If you start romanticizing about the substances that you used to do, take a couple of steps back, because one of the phases of relapse is the romanticizing of your previous habit. If I start sitting around and I think, you know what, I'm really glad I'm sober. I love the sober life, but boy, I do miss the nod. I'm in a bad place. Now, it doesn't mean that, there aren't going to be days where I think it would be really nice to turn my brain off for 8 hours. It would be really nice to shut down for 8 hours. It would be nice to nod, right? But if I'm sharing that out loud, I've gone past the thinking about it and into an area of romanticizing about it. Do you understand the difference, people? It's like when I talk about you set a goal. If your goal parks right here, it's not much of a goal, honestly. When you take it from here and you put it here, the process is starting. If you write it down on paper, the process has moved a little bit further down the road, right? Now we're getting somewhere. It's the same thing in relapse. If you think to yourself, boy, today's the day I really missed the stuff, you can articulate that to a group of people without romanticizing. If you can feel free to go in and talk to people and say, you know what, today's a day I feel like using. But if the person you're talking to goes, yeah, you know what, today would be a good day to use, find someone else to talk to, right? That's not going to be a perspective. Now we're getting into a phase of romanticizing, and we're getting into a phase that you got to start questioning. The canary in the coal mine just dropped dead in the bottom of the cage. You understand? These are things that are real. And I'll tell you right now, if you happen to have been discussing any of these things in the live chat, people, I didn't sit and spy and watch the entire conversation. Didn't seem like something I needed to do. I'll be really honest with you. And if it was a harmless discussion of things or if it wasn't. But I'm using it as an example because these are the kind of things, these are the road signs that people see. Right before the first of the year, I was talking to someone who said to me, if you knew how much I missed the taste of beer. And I said to them, hey, that sounds like maybe that's not the best place to be. Do you want to talk about this? And he said, no. It's not like I'm ever going to drink the stuff. I'm just saying I miss the taste of beer. It's a non-issue. I said, all right, you sure? He said, yeah. And then he drank a 12-pack or maybe more a couple of days later. Now, maybe as a support system, I should have been a little bit more rowdy when I said, are you sure that you're not in a bad place? Are you sure? But people, engineer some canaries in the coal mine. Those things start with honesty. There's not a meter you buy. It's a part of your brain that is parked right here in the front. It's the part that comes up with all the really cool ideas. The fact that you're watching me live is because a lot of people had a very, very active front part of their brain. The stuff that's craving this and the stuff that's trying to get you off of the sobriety railroad track is back here, right? So let's get some canary in the coal mine stuff going on up front. Daily evaluations, because this is a lifelong fight. And the beautiful thing is, most often people, think of this, and this is a good analogy, I think you'll like this one. Think of this as a very large boat. Huh? Now, if you've ever seen a cruise ship try to turn, it's not going to happen, right? They bring in tugboats. They bring in boats that literally shove the front end of that thing around. However, if you get that puppy up to speed, right, and now you're really making good time, you barely touch the wheel and that thing starts to do whatever you want it to do. That's sobriety. When you first get rolling, to get that thing off a track versus when you're really cooking. When you're really cooking, people, and you're really trucking along in life, a small little micro adjustment can get you off the rails. But the good news is an adjustment this big will get you back on the rails. You understand? But if we let that baby get sideways, you don't just leave your course. You kill the engine. Then you got to fire that thing back up, right? And we better get some tugboats, because to get the front end of that thing going this way again, there's intervention that is necessary, whether that's people, whether that's you, but now we have to intervene in the process of where you were at. Let's keep going at full steam ahead. See that little thing right back there? Right? Full steam ahead. All the engine room, we're cranking, right? Because if you're cranked up and if you're really moving at full speed, people, all you're doing every day is this. If the thing gets a little bit out of whack, you're just going to bring it right back on. And if it gets a little bit out of whack, you're going to bring it right back on. The trouble is, if you don't identify that, right? Because if you get 2 degrees to port, the next thing you know, you're missing the target by about 1,000 miles. It doesn't take much in navigating as a sober person to get way off course. Evaluate yourself every single day. And if you're new to the sobriety game, I'm going to be very honest. There are going to be days that suck. And in the beginning, they're going to come more often. But if you're 10 years in or 11 years in, don't think you're not going to have those days. You know, don't believe for one hot second. And if you see me saying things, and if you don't catch me saying this often, drop me an email. If I don't tell people that this is a lifelong process, but make no mistake, people, if you're out there and you're listening to my voice and you don't have a drug problem and you don't have an alcohol problem, you also have days that will suck. The difference is our equipment. The difference is that the way a person deals with things when it's going bad is with their gray matter. And we have established over closing in on 6 months of being a family here that our equipment, although it's beautiful and it's lovely, and honestly, in some ways it works better than everybody else's, but in some ways it doesn't. There are parts of our equipment that make it very difficult sometimes to stay the course. Awareness in everything, right? Having to do with sobriety. Knowledge is power. Being aware of where you're at. Being aware of the fact that your brain is going to make really bad decisions if you let it. If we have not proven that by this point, people, then you've never listened to anything that I've said. You know, from time to time, people say really lovely things about me in the comment section. From time to time, people will send me private messages, emails that say really lovely things about me. And very often it has to do with the fact that you think I'm smart. I get that a lot. I really do. I'm also the guy that went to prison for robbing banks. That's not smart, correct? So I have a mind that I have demonstrated can work pretty good from time to time. But you also have to be very aware of the fact that sometimes your mind doesn't work fantastically. And if you start getting a little out of whack, people, if you start getting a little bit left of center or a little bit right of center, you got to get back on track before you get way off course. You want to know one of the best ways, honestly, to stay on course? And I don't care if you do it here. Obviously, I would love for you to do it here. But if you got somewhere else to do it, fantastic. Truthfully, the goal of this lifeboat is to get people sober. If you decide to get sober here and then you go to 12-step meetings down the block from your house and you do that 7 nights a week, it's a win. You don't have to do it here. You just have to do it. You have to find some way to support what it is you're doing. And there is really something to be said for taking 2 hours every single day to think about keeping the boat on course. For those of you who then go over to the chat, that's even better. But monitor the things that you're saying and monitor the things that you're thinking and monitor the things that are going on around you. Because if you don't, people, then what happens is you got to fire up that boat and start from scratch. And everyone who does, the universal response is regret. And as long as I have been doing this and talking to people about sobriety, I've never heard anyone say to me, I'm so glad that I relapsed. It was a great decision. Getting drunk the other night was perfect. It really has made things better. Or snorting coke one more time was really what I needed to do. There's always that, instant regret. And illogically, people always feel like everything good they did in sobriety up to that point went away, which isn't the truth, people. For those of you who stumbled and you did something, doesn't mean that all of the good up to that point ended. Well, I have to start from day one again. No, who cares? Don't get hung up on the day number. Get hung up on the day you're on. If every single day that rolls around you manage to get through, there are cliches. I started off this by saying there are so many cliches. And one of them is that you just have to live it one day at a time. People, it's the truth. It really is. It's a cliche because it's true. You just got to get through today. But the way you do that is at the end of today, you evaluate. And it, as crazy, you feel sometimes it's like when I talk to you about doing daily affirmations. I realize sitting in front of a mirror and talking to yourself makes you feel stupid. I get that, but it works, right? So sometimes you can get over that fact that there's a reason people do it. You're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. Sit in front of the mirror, do daily affirmations, this kind of thing. As silly as it might sound, at the end of the day, just ask yourself one question. The day I had, is it more likely to make tomorrow a day I can remain sober, or is it more likely to make tomorrow a day that I'm going to use? And if at the end of that day you go, you know what, I don't know that today really did help the sobriety, then figure out what the heck you did wrong. Because if you just blow it off and go, well, I'll do better tomorrow, you won't. You won't. If you don't evaluate and find out the things that you're doing, I promise you, people, you're doomed to do it again and again and again and again. And it gets old. And you know what, people? I'm happy. I really am truthfully happy to have my bobbleheaded partner on the other side of the glass. And you can't see him, but he's got a big smile for most of this entire live feed. He's just had a look like he's back where he wants to be, which is a really cool thing. But Mark and I have been talking off camera for days about the fact that, look, we're two guys that have a few days of sobriety under our belt. And yet we've both been going through some days that suck. So I'm going to turn this over to my bobbleheaded partner, who I'm sure will have things to share about exactly, what it feels like. He's got a lot longer than I do. He's been doing this close to two times as long as I've been sober. You'd think by then you got the whole thing put together, right? There shouldn't be any problem. All the easy stuff, people, it's just not the way it is. Mark, how are you?
I'm all right. Better now.
Good.
Yeah. Me and Tommy, we talk a lot about a whole lot of things. Guys, we don't just talk about trying to help everybody else. Sometimes we need to help each other and help ourselves a lot of the time. And this is part of that for me. And I know that Tommy feels the same way with that too. We said so many times, this is therapy for us, and this is what we do, and this is why we keep doing it. Might sound a little selfish, but sometimes, guys, when you're in sobriety, you have to be selfish. You have to look at yourself. Now, I'm not saying, be ridiculous with it. That's not what I'm saying. But just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to take that time for yourself. And for me, guys, I've been AWOL for, not really AWOL. I talk to Tommy almost every day. But, it's, I've been going through all the whole CV plus math thing. My whole family, had it. Had some issues with my daughter the other day that really, really, got in my head, just to be honest. And this time of year for me, especially, is kind of hard. And the reason why is because this is the time of year that I got sober. And that comes along with a lot of baggage. It comes along with a lot of great things too. But there is bad things that happen during those time frames. It does not feel good most of the time right at the beginning. Just being honest. Okay? Especially before you get in, if you're going to do any kind of recovery center or whatever, any kind of rehab, usually you have a few days before you get into a facility like that are just extremely hell for you. Because that's usually what from what I can see and from what I've talked to bunches of people with this, a lot of times that's the straw that breaks the camel's back. You get yourself into a position when you're out there chasing it, and it becomes almost impossible sometimes to find what you need. And then you sit there 2, 3, 4, 5 days dry. And then your mind, it almost switches. It switches to, I don't care about, getting high. I just don't want to feel like this. I don't even care what I got to do. I mean, you'd mortgage the house 12 times. And at that point. And believe me, that's what it comes down to for a lot of people. And for me, and I know I've said this a lot, been sober for over 10 years now. I spent the 2011, 2012 New Year's in rehab. So this time of year for me is actually pretty bad, just to be honest. Then you throw in, it's wintertime, you don't get as much daylight. And guys, I know that sounds ridiculous to a lot of people, but you have to, it's a biological thing with our brains, guys. Cats are nocturnal, right? So they're geared for nighttime. We're not. So it's a biological thing. It has nothing to do with really anything else. It does affect your mood. And, it will not make you exempt just because you've been sober for 10, 12, 15, 20 years. Anybody that's been in long-term sobriety is going to understand what I'm saying. Now it will be, those times start spreading out, right? Before you start, seeing them, hitting your brain and stuff a lot. But they will slowly get further and further apart. But what I can tell you is they will never, ever grow far enough apart from each other that they can't see it. They can't see each other. That's part of the thing, that is one of the harder parts of sobriety in long term, is because you oftentimes, again, we talked about this, you forget what that felt like. So what that does is it allows those other things to come in, that's where people start thinking, well, I can just do it one time. I'm far enough away. I'll be able to handle it. No, it doesn't work that way. And I know that it really does look like it could work that way for people like that, because I've had the same thoughts. Now, I will say this, I've never acted on those thoughts. I'm one of the very few that have such a great support system that if I really wanted to go do something, I'd have to, shoot, I'm breaking down steel walls and everything else. Honestly, it would be so, and I am so fortunate for that. But at the same time, we do provide something similar to that here. Tommy talks about the live chat. That right there, guys, that's instantaneous accountability for people. And sometimes that's what it takes to keep people on the straight and narrow. And, Tommy talked about the honeymoon phase. there absolutely is a huge honeymoon phase. I mean, you really truly do ride a high because what you're accomplishing something in your brain that you never thought you could. You thought there was no way you were going to, because, I'm sure when you guys were using or whatever you were doing, you look over at somebody that had 10 years like myself of sobriety. You're like, man, he really looks like he's doing good, man. I want that, but I'll never be able to do it. And then once you figure out that you can do it, you ride that honeymoon thing. And that honeymoon thing, sometimes it tapers off, and sometimes it just comes to a brick wall and smacks you right in the face. And that's why we need things like what we're doing here. Because when those things happen, you have to have those people. You have to have at least some sort of group you can go to, somebody that you trust. Just speaking it out into the ether helps. Sometimes you need to hear it yourself, come out of your own mouth, just to understand where you're at. And when I'm fighting it, and I do, guys, it's like I said, I love snow, right? The day I went into rehab, there was 12 inches of snow on the ground here. It ruined it for me for 5 years. Completely ruined snow. I hated snow after that for like 5 years. I love it again now. Because like I said, once you get away from it long enough, sometimes those things, you kind of forget what that feels like a little bit. You never, ever forget what it feels like all the way, but you do start to be back off from that, and that's a hard thing to deal with for people. It just really is. And guys, like I said, I've been going through it, and, with all the sicknesses and all that kind of stuff that was going on here, and then you throw that on at the same time of year, it was really hard for me to even want to do or say or do anything at all, period. But, like we talked about before, because I felt this, I thought about this, the other day when I came back and me and Tommy did a show, was it late last week, Tommy? Was it Friday?
Yep.
Something like that?
It was.
I felt 100% better after I got off that stream. And then that all hit me again. And I had all that stuff going on with my daughter and stuff. And I let it get to me. I did. And we're honest. We're honest here. That was probably the biggest reason why I wasn't here. I just couldn't get myself to do it. And that's just me being honest. That's all that is, guys. I wanted to be here, and I knew it would make me feel better, but I didn't allow myself to go do that because I was so stuck in my own self-pity or whatever you want to call it, just remembering things. And it really sucked. It did. And, the brief conversations that me and Tommy had really started to yank me out of it. Just because I started, because we say this stuff to each other all the time. Hey, man, we're going to go, we're going to therapy tonight. We're having a live feed. Those kinds of things. And, I forgot because I was with the COVID thing. I actually did forget what that made me feel like a little bit. I really didn't have that intense, let's just go do this. I do now. And, and again, like I said, sometimes people do need to take that time, but at the same time, we can't forget where we need to go. And we can't forget what road we're on. We talk about the speed bump versus a dead end. And, speed bumps are going to get at you. They just really are. They will. You just got to learn how to get over top of it. You might even need to reach out and have somebody help pull you over it. And, and a lot of times that is the case. And I can't tell you guys how thankful I am for Tommy and for all you guys because it really does. It does get your head back into the right frame. And, just to back it up just for a second, we talk about this too with the happiness, right? What it felt like when we were high, right? And I said it a bunch. It's a fake thing. It's fake. You are never supposed to feel that. Not the way that you were getting it. Because it is a different type of thing. It's very, when me and Tommy come on here and we talk about how this really does give us a dopamine release when we can help people and all that kind of stuff, because it does. But it's not like a instantaneous smack of unnatural chemical hitting your brain and making your brain just flood with the stuff. Okay? It's a different thing. All right. It just really is. And sometimes me and Tommy, we get stuck in kind of we have to, I don't know how to say it, we kind of have to walk on eggshells a little bit, or with kid gloves, because we don't want to push people away from getting sober by telling them that, hey, it's not always going to be good. You're going to go through another bad time. You know, if you say that to somebody in the wrong way without explaining, like we have tonight, you always fear, did I say something there that might have, could they have gotten some help if I had not said that? So we struggle with how we should present that. And we've done a pretty good job of that so far. I really do think we have. I think we've figured out that. But there's also days like this live stream right here where it has to be brutally honest, because there are people that are here watching and listening and talking that are 10, 20 years sober. They're here for help too. So everybody has to hear what they need to hear. And we really, truly do try to, walk that line. But it is a hard line to walk. And I tell you, we're walking the line with you. And I know we say that, and I know it's probably hard to see it, because all you guys get to see of me and Tommy is right here. And we're trying to, at that point in time, we're trying to help others. Not trying to help ourselves, we're trying to help others. And so that's the mask and the face that we have on at that time. That's the costume we got on. Tommy's got his hat on. You see what I'm saying? We're ready to go to work. And that's kind of what it is. And I don't consider it like a job or anything like that. Don't misunderstand that. But I do consider this something that I need to do. And I know Tommy feels the same way. And that's why we're so dedicated. It really, truly is. We're dedicated to that. We're dedicated to you guys. We're dedicated to all of it. Whatever comes with it. And that's one of the biggest reasons why we're back here on YouTube. We're dedicated. Even though it was bad for a minute. We're dedicated.
Yep.
Okay? We're not willing to let you guys suffer for stupidity. And then that's why we're here. But at the same time, we're here because it helps us too.
Yeah, we need it.
It's definite. Most definitely. So yeah, I just wanted to give, like I said, guys, just a little update on why and what was all going on with me, because I know you guys care. I wouldn't say this to people that I didn't care about. Promise you. So
got a couple good ones.
Go for it,
Mark. I got some good ones. Jacob Forrester said, every war won has battles lost. As I was scrolling back through, he was talking about, the stumbles and the things like that. I also saw, I got to say to Swiss Vape, my friend Swiss said, "Oh no, did I curse in a live chat before? Because I may have made a comment about that earlier somewhere else." You know what, brother? It wasn't anything. It was not a big deal. It wasn't anything else. But yeah, you did. And you know something? Who cares? For real. Don't beat yourself up. And I certainly am not. Swiss Vape is one of my favorite people. And you know what? I could probably tell this story. I'm gonna tell it quick, but I got to tell this story real quick. And also, Truth said that he's at a turning point. He actually addressed it to you, Mark, because of what you were saying. But he said, the time has come to concentrate on me. I'm at a turning point in my life where I got to worry about me. And you know something, people? If that sounds like someone that is being, selfish or anything else, you've all been on an airplane, right? Get that mask on yourself before you start worrying about other people. And we're all guilty of that. And the longer that you're in sobriety, the more you will start to focus on other people more than yourself, because there really is that. Having had a spiritual awakening because of the process of getting sober, we felt the need to take this to other people. That is the reason that there is a 12-step program and not an 11-step program, right? Because that final step really does hammer home sobriety. And it's something that Mark and I got a guard on, probably maybe a little bit more than the next, because with everything going on, it's very easy to worry about, 600 or 700 people's sobriety. And at times it can almost supersede what's going on in our lives. And like I said, yeah, it gets weighty. And there are days that we come in here and look at each other and go, you ready? And then the disclaimer's over and we're ready to go. And then at the end of it, it's the same thing. It's over and you go, oh, and you kind of got to go back to dealing with your issues. But never feel guilty. Never feel guilty for taking care of yourself. That's a really important thing. Self-care is the most important thing in the world because you can't care for anyone else if you don't care for yourself, right? You can't pour from an empty vessel, I think is what they say. But I got a quick story, people. At the end of every single video that we do, we say, you reach out and try to save somebody. And recently I have expounded upon it because of some of my rants and some of the other things that I've done here. It seemed important to me to maybe hammer that home a little bit more severely, maybe, to just really make the point. And more often than not, the form that takes is saying to somebody, hey, man, I'm worried about you, and it's not a comfortable conversation. It really isn't. But there are times, people, where reaching out and saving somebody might take a different form, and it may be something far more drastic. There's no reason to share someone's name because it wouldn't be, prudent. But the Swiss Vapor has an associate in Switzerland that found himself in one of those places where he's far over the edge. This person was living a very dangerous lifestyle. He was one of those people that if he took the top off of a bottle of anything, he could instantly throw it in the trash because he's going to drink until that bottle is empty. He also was taking monstrous amount of pills, LSD. Like, this man was literally a toxic waste dump of chemicals. And he found himself in a situation where he's probably going to end up getting rubbed out. The people around him, he was offending virtually everybody. Fortunately, our friend, the Swiss Vapor, he's a former military cat, and the form of reaching out and saving somebody literally required taking this guy to the ground, subduing this individual. And I would imagine if you watched this from a distance, it probably didn't look like somebody reaching out and saving somebody. It really didn't. But if that's where the story ended, it wouldn't be much of a story. But he then removed the individual from that scene and intervened in his life. And this is an individual that was so far over the edge, people, that if you heard the stories of how this man was living, it was bordering on terrifying. Like, this is the kind of life-ending stuff that you see and we all know somebody like that, where you just look at him and go, man, this guy's got a death wish. It's just a matter of time. This guy's 4 weeks sober. He's 4 weeks sober. This, taking this guy, literally tackling this guy, taking him to the ground, having to rough him up slightly and get in this guy's face and say, hey, you know what? It's got to stop. You're killing yourself, and making enough of a point in the process of doing that where, people, that's reaching out and saving somebody. And you know what? When stories like that come back to the boat, when we hear things like that, and we realize that on the other side of the world, right, in a place that makes really great watches, by the way, great watches, but completely on the other side of the world, to have a crew member of the boat, literally doing whatever it takes to save somebody from killing themselves with drugs and alcohol. If you knew the warm and fuzzy that we get off of that, for real, this is such a perfect example of when the malfunctioning reward center of the brain begins to function. I honestly, people, I got the story face to face, right? I spend time with Swiss Vapor talking one-on-one. We communicate that way, and I could feel it. It was like a full body wave of just really feeling fantastic.
Yeah, that's guys, me and Tommy, we feel this quite often. But that was the time that Swiss got to feel that.
Yeah.
And
right.
It's a beautiful thing for me and Tommy to see that, because, That's the whole goal here. We talk about this so much. It's spread it. Go. If all me and Tommy was ever meant to do was be here till today and tomorrow it was gone, I promise you there's still going to be more people that get sober because of what we've done here. Because you guys and us, we'd go out, right? I do it every day. I go out in the world, man, and talk to whoever I need to talk to, right? And that's just what we do. And it really reminds me, Tommy, of, this is going to age me quite well here. Anybody that's ever seen the show, or most of you guys have, Little House on the Prairie. I'm not sure if you guys watched it long enough late into that series where Albert was addicted to powdered morphine. And what did his dad do? Took him out in the woods, literally took him to the woodshed. Okay? And there was a few times, at least during the episodes, where he physically had to hold him down. Right? Because he was running. He was trying to go get his drug and all that. And just a little nuance here. What ended up fixing it? Spirituality.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know that I don't care what your spirituality is, as long as it's there. Because it's really, really, that really can help you get to that last, man, I'm there. And yeah. And, Tommy kind of got on me one time when I was sick, and rightfully so. I said, hey, man, I got this. And he kind of went quiet, so I knew that he was a little upset. And he's like, you don't get to say that to me. And because he was asking how I was doing, and in my mind, I was like, man, I just want, this, that, or the other. And then I realized, I needed that. He said what I needed to hear. Yeah, I don't get to say that to Tommy. Me and Tommy are brothers. I don't get to say that. He knows everything about what's going on with me, and he shares the same with me. And what I'm saying is, guys, that's kind of the relationship that you're going to find when you start helping people. That's what you're going to get. And so anyway.
I like it. And you know how I'm going to end this with a cliche too, because one of the cliches that you hear the most, and you hear it in sobriety all the time, but it gets used more about the lifeboat than you're probably going to hear it anywhere else. And the one that we just hear over and over and over again is that, you know what, if we just saved, I would still like for, if we could just save one person, if you could just save one person, then the entire thing would be worth it. And I said that right from the very beginning. And you know what? I don't like it anymore. I really don't. I think maybe there was a time where that sounded pretty good to me, but it doesn't anymore. I'm kind of to the point now where I feel like with everything we do here and with everything we know about sobriety and how much we talk about it and how much we care and how much we demonstrate that we care, maybe everybody on the boat should be trying to save one person, right? Like at a minimum. And we know Swiss has got his under the belt. Maybe go out and get another one. But there's no reason why we just can't multiply like that. And, you heard Mark talk once about how exponential numbers just start to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I knew a guy that was basically a hustler. And the guy used to play golf for money. It was how he paid his rent, everything else. Very talented golfer. The guy's a hustler. And he would get up on the first tee and he would say, what do you say we just bet a dime? And people would go 10 cents. He'd go, yeah, but we'll double it on every hole. Do that, people. Do that. Go 10, 20, 40, and take that out and watch how much money that is by the 18th hole. And it's the same principle, people. We got a couple thousand people here on the lifeboat, right? If everybody went out and got one, and then those went out and got one, you have any idea? People, honestly, it would be very, very quickly before there wasn't anybody left on this planet that didn't know the fact that they could live a life without this garbage. For real. We'd reach all of the corners of the earth and we would get the message out to every single person that needs to hear it. So tomorrow morning, I'm going to be going up on Facebook over there, or is it Meta? Is it Meta? We're going to be going on Meta, and we're going to be over there in the safe harbor. We're going to be talking tomorrow morning. It's going to be 8 o'clock in the morning. It's going to be at 8 o'clock in the morning. Between now and then, Reach out and try to save somebody, right? Do it. Seriously, do it. It's important. It's what we do, right? This is not all for show. And yeah, you got to take care of yourself first. But I have a really good feeling about most of you. I really feel like you got a mask on your face, right? And I feel like that vessel is probably full. So let's start pouring it out a little. All right. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
gotta love it. Have a great night, people.